Okay, now you understand how AI models work. Let's talk about something I see many developers get tripped up on when they first start using AI tools, and that's hallucination. Now, I know it sounds kind of funny, but this is when an AI model confidently generates information that seems like it could be okay, but it's actually just incorrect. And this can be hard to spot. So we're going to show some examples. I'm going to show you what hallucination looks like so that you can be prepared as you're working with AI tools. Now, why do these models hallucinate in the first place? If you remember, we talked about how an AI model really just predicts the next token or word in a sequence based on everything that they've learned and they've been trained on. Well, sometimes those patterns that they've learned will lead them down the wrong path. It's like if you're typing in your phone and you've got this very powerful text autocomplete and you say, the weather today is blank, you're gonna see your phone suggest the next word in that sequence. Maybe it's sunny, maybe it's cloudy. It's been trained on this from common patterns. AI models are gonna do the same thing with coding, but you're getting maybe an entire block of code or an entire concept. If the AI model doesn't know about something, it doesn't just say, actually, I don't know. Instead, what usually happens is it generates something based on the patterns it's seen in the past. So for coding, let's look at an example. This might mean inventing something that's like a plausible API that just doesn't really exist. This is the code from the last chapter. Maybe I'll say, let's migrate this code to Tailwind v6. Now, I don't know what time you're watching this video, but as of today, Tailwind v4 is the latest version. So Tailwind v6 is the futuristic version that Adam has cooked up in a basement somewhere, and I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's amazing. But the models don't know about it. It also doesn't exist, even if it goes and looks and searches the internet. So it's telling me right now, perfect, you have Tailwind v4 set up. Let's move to Tailwind v6. I'm just gonna help you out here. Well, they have all these new fancy features. It sounds so convincing. Let me update this component to take advantage of these Tailwind v6 features. Now, maybe this is what the Tailwind team should build, whatever the model thinks is a good idea for v6, but this is just wrong. None of this exists. And it's important for you to know this as the manager, as the conductor, as the person steering the AI model. We really have to be intentional about the things we ask and develop a sense of when the model is hallucinating something. Now, in this example, I led the model astray, but you'll still find cases where the model will invent plausible sounding API methods that don't actually exist, or might accidentally mix up the syntax between different tools, or even make a config option that isn't even real. These are all things that you're gonna learn to develop a sense of spotting out and fixing as you're reviewing the output of the model. Now, why does this happen? The AI model providers are taking just a ton of text and proprietary data on the internet to train these models. And it's up to some date called the knowledge cutoff. You can think about this like the latest known knowledge that the models have. If I ask for something that is past that date, you might be more likely to get hallucinations. Tailwind v4 came out in 2025. If a model's knowledge cutoff date was in 2024, it's more likely that you're gonna get a hallucination when it tries to just make up some probable next suggestion for what it would do with Tailwind v4. As you work with AI models more, you're gonna learn how to spot these hallucinations. So it's worth being skeptical of the results you get back from the model and then doing some work to verify the suggestions it makes independently. One way is to make sure you're using an editor or an IDE that gives you feedback in your environment. So language servers, which we talked about, things like TypeScript and linters and tests. These are all things that if the model generates incorrect code, ideally your editor lights up with colors and it says, actually, this is wrong. And you can give that as feedback back to the model. Now, if we go back to cursor on our example earlier where the model hallucinated Tailwind v6, you might push back on the model and say, no, this is wrong. Tailwind v6 doesn't exist. And what you might find is the model says something like, you're absolutely right. I apologize for the confusion. Tailwind v6 doesn't actually exist. The latest stable version is Tailwind v3. This is a good example of two things. One, the model being confidently wrong, and then you having the ability to push back on it. And two, it thinks that the latest version is v3. this is the knowledge cutoff date in action. So Tailwind CSS v4 was made stable, I believe, in January of 2025. And the knowledge cutoff date here was, I believe, March of 2025 for this model of Claude 4 Sonnet. So in its training data, a lot of the information, Tailwind CSS v4 was still in alpha or beta. So it's just a good example of where you need to verify the output of the model and don't automatically trust that it's correct. Hallucinations definitely happen. Now, even with all of this, hallucinations and the limitations of AI models, they're still incredibly useful. The key to working effectively with these models is to have this mindset of verifying and validating the outputs. These suggestions are just a starting point. They're not the final answer. Now, you might think, that seems like a lot of work. I could just go kind of look it up myself. But when you learn to use these tools correctly, it can help you save time from having to go dig through docs or go dig through random Google pages online and help you focus on what you can do really effectively, which is build software. Now, throughout this course, we're going to suggest some approaches that you can take to improve the quality of the code that gets generated from the models and just learn more tips on how to work effectively with AI models. But before we can do that, we have to talk about how this interaction with the models works. We need to understand more about how they think and how they're priced. And to do that, we need to talk about tokens. So let's dig into that in our next lesson.